folks can hear me, but they can't see me.
Yeah, I can hear you. Chris, I started the broadcast.
Yeah, let me just put my camera on, but nothing is visible. Oh, I see what's happening. Sorry for the...
We're live, Chris.
Okay, got it.
So again, apologize for the delay. Little bit of mix-up over, as you mentioned, in today's world, we have multiple email addresses for everybody, and that caught us a little off guard.
Yeah, it's all right. So let me share my presentation with y'all. And just happened. Is the file showing yet? Mike? Can anyone see the presentation? Okay, you can hear me. That's fine. I'm trying to share the presentation, but that's not working, so I'm just going to try sharing my screen. We'll get there.
Chris, sometimes there's been a delay in sharing. I'm not sure how that works.
Yeah, this is fine. I'm just going to share my screen. Let me know if you can see it.
Yep, coming up.
Yeah.
Okay. Chris, the mic is yours.
Great. Okay. Well, apologies for the technical difficulties, but here we are, and I'll try to catch up a bit. Here today to talk to you about my journey applying product-led growth in practice and ways in which that can help you on your own. A bit about me. My background's pretty varied. I began my career in operations engineering and academic computing, and then I went out into the big wide world on my own voyage of discovery. And I worked in and on consumer products and enterprise software, as well as hardware. I even worked for a car company once upon a time, and the majority of my career has been spent in DevOps. But I've worked on the pre-sales and post-sales side of things and product management. So I've been exposed to lots of different ways in which products get sold, positioned, marketed. I've been the customer, I've been the buyer, that kind of thing. And presently I'm VP of Product Growth at Sauce Labs. My first VP role and a bit of a big deal in terms of the depth and breadth of impact that I can have in that organization, especially when it comes to applying product-led growth. So let's talk about that for a second. I want to highlight the difference between growth with an uppercase G and product-led growth. So growth with an uppercase G, as far as I'm concerned, is removing impediments to value, eliminating friction. And that can occur on both the product side of things in terms of the experiences and the value that we create for people who buy and consume our products. But it can also happen in the context of the business in terms of what we do internally that affects our ability to be successful selling those products. As VP of Growth, I have responsibility to look at both dimensions and help people make the appropriate changes to remove that friction on a path to profitability. Product-led growth is a set of methods, strategies, and tactics for driving growth. And I make this point because there's a very big difference between those two things, the same way there's a difference between agile with a lowercase a and agile with an uppercase A. Right? It's one thing to be agile and to be iterative and to do those kinds of things in terms of software delivery. It's quite another to apply a framework. And the reason I highlight that is because it's contextual. So to orient you to where I am in the journey, right? I've not joined a company that is at the very beginning of its journey. It's not product-led by default. We are an enterprise software company, and We have an enterprise sales team, so our approach at the moment is top-down. We have a self-serve product, but I've joined an organization that is a living organism. It's evolving and changing. So I have to orient myself and figure out where things are. I have to know where I am so I can understand how to plot the course that leads to growth. So I show you this because most of the situations that we're in are a bit of a beautiful mess, as the squiggly line might imply, and we're somewhere between, completely green field and the end of everything. Since I'm relatively new, I started on January 11th. My immediate thing was like, well, I need to figure out some outcomes, right? We all start our jobs and we have a 30, 60, 90-day plan. And from the perspective of growth or product-led growth, there are certain things that we care pretty deeply about. Conversion, satisfaction, revenue, engagement, referrals. These are all things we want to increase. We want to see them move. And we want to decrease churn, and we want to lower the number of support cases. Those are negative factors. And that's great. So I'm where I am and I want to achieve a lunar landing. The problem is, this is what it feels like. It's pretty overwhelming. And I think we've all been there. If you're sort of starting your growth journey, or if you're in the middle of it, it can be really difficult to understand your place in that universe, and how you're going to get from where you are, let's say down on Earth, to where you want to go up there. So we'll talk about product-led growth in a little more depth, because it sounds really easy, and here's why, right? It has lots of things going for it, right? You design for the end user, you listen to people, culture of experimentation, growth mindset, you deliver personalized experiences, show value before you ask people for money. All of us have had experiences where we buy things and we get to try them and experience them, and only then we decide we want to pay. Sometimes when it comes to software, there's somebody that pings us and says, hey, are you getting everything that you need from this? Is there anything I can do to help you? Those good people are customer success. Notice they're not trying to sell you anything. They're trying to help you be better and use that product to get that value. And then, assuming you get the first two things right, you get money. And you can invest in instrumentation, you can build a growth team, you can run experiments. So sign me up. That's fantastic, because behold the flywheel. If you start with a great product that solves a valuable problem, it leads to this virtuous cycle that results in a profit-generating machine. Great products, low pricing, automation, aka self-serve, and a lot of volume, because you're selling to everybody, means money. But a funny thing happens on the way to money, which is that's what people index on. And I waded into a discussion in social media related to this, because this was the headline or the subject of the discussion, the myth of product-led growth. And so many times in my career, I've seen this, right? People leap immediately to, great, I'll change everything to focus on my product to lead the path to stellar growth. And that is a huge mistake. Yes, there are all these things that you need to do to be product-led, but you must start with a deep understanding of customers and markets and the valuable problem that your product solves. It has to be connected to something, because products in search of markets or solutions in search of problems fail. And there's a disconnect. And I've done growth-related initiatives, or I've led growth in different organizations, and people index on the framework and on the tools. They forget about the outcomes. So when you apply a framework like this, context is incredibly important. What is your business? What is your product? Who are your users? What is this like for you and your situation and your company? And I can't impart to you enough the importance of thinking about that. When I arrived at Sauce Labs, yes, I'm the sum total of all of my experiences, my successes and failures, but I've entered a different context with different people, different products, a different market. I have to establish that context, understand where I am, and then orient myself and move forward. So where are you now? Be honest with yourself about that, and your readiness for that journey, and some of the things that you may need to do to prepare. And there are lots of things that you might need to do around that. You're going to have to learn and listen and understand. before you go about applying a framework and creating that profit-generating machine. But you also have to understand where you want to go, and you need to be very clear on what your outcomes are. And the definition of a good outcome, from my perspective, is that it's concrete, it's specific, it's tangible, it's time-bound. Forget about acronyms related to goals. An outcome results in a change, a meaningful change in behavior. From a growth standpoint, I want to see revenue go up. It's kind of the ultimate outcome. And what are the things that I want to see go down on the path to seeing that number go up? Churn is a big one. Usually when I make that time bound, I say, based on the current rate of churn we're seeing and the current rate of growth and the impact or relationship between those two things, I want to see growth increase by this, and I want to see churn decrease by that. And I'm specific about the numbers and the time. And why am I specific about those things? Because then, based on that, I understand, how I might go about doing it. So the levers that you have to pull need to be attached to something. Outcomes help orient you to those things. Many times, people don't know where they're going. They just start by applying a framework, and when you don't know where you're going, any road will take you there. Just a bit of humor there, but it's absolutely true. Please don't mistake progress or the optimization for a local maximum as growth. There's a difference between busyness and achieving an outcome and getting somewhere. And it's very important that you know what that is as you approach your growth journey and applying this framework or taking steps wherever you are. And for that reason, stop, right? Before you go off to do anything, you have to have product market fit to be successful with any kind of growth. If you don't have that, no framework in the world is going to help you get it. The other thing is that there are various things that need to be true in terms of your readiness to embark upon this journey. And OpenView Partners does a great job of describing these sort of 8 dimensions, one or more of which will help you understand your readiness for that journey. For instance, do you have a self-serve product that enables people to see value before you ask them for money? Is it possible for the salespeople to engage later? I won't go through all of the 8, but I'd really encourage you to look at all the materials that are out there in the world about this and think about those and apply them contextually. But the stop here is really about, if you don't have product market fit, if you have a solution in search of a problem, stop here, go figure that out, then think about growth and applying good product management practices to achieving it. So my first course of action around orienting myself was to think, was to analyze and reason. And thinking is a process of figuring out what information is useful or meaningful and discarding the rest. And that involves analysis and reasoning. There's a reason I focus a lot on critical thinking, and a lot of the mental models that I tend to apply in my work relate to first principles, because I think people find themselves in these situations where they're mired in the problem and it's unnecessarily complex, or they can't see their way out of it. And by breaking things down a bit and understanding and thinking, you can do better. And what do I mean by that? Some of it's definitions. If you don't have common and well understood definitions of things, then it's going to be really difficult to have a meaningful conversation with anybody. And by define, I mean, what's an account? What's a user? What's the value metric? What are people paying for? If you don't know what those things are, it's going to be very difficult for you to measure. And these are quantitative things and qualitative things. And we all know, based on common sense, that quantitative things are how many or how much, and qualitative things tend to answer the question why. These are some of the things that you need to care about in the context of growth. It's not all of them, it's some of them. And again, it's highly contextual. I care a whole lot about ARR and MRR and churn, and a bunch of these other factors inform me or tell me a lot of things about ways in which I can influence those numbers or why those numbers are the way they are. Note about customer satisfaction and NPS, because those are somewhat controversial. Some people think that they're great, some people think that they suck. They're most useful when combined with a survey question. Asking people how likely they are to tell someone else that they should use your product is only useful if you understand why they might or why they might not. So prompting that way is a good thing. On the qualitative side of things, no less important, who needs it? What do they value? Why do they buy it? Do they think it's useful? Does it feel easy or difficult? And all of these questions lead to why. Superhuman, interesting product that's very product-led, employs the survey method pretty effectively. They ask questions, and I think this is important. How much would you hate your life if you couldn't use this anymore? If your product's really bad, maybe you ask the question is, how much better would your life be if you didn't? Not good. The North Star, lots of folks talk about this, but you need to be able to measure value in the context of your customers, your users, and what they value. And if you can't do that, then you're in a difficult place. So that's the first thing to define. What's the unit of value, and how do your customers experience it? When I join an organization or when I have a problem where I think the product is maybe hard, I don't know, I always start with easy. Is the product easy? That's my first question, because the easiest product wins. There's a reason there's a paperclip on the screen. Two things. One is we tend to orient to technology solutions, and sometimes easy things sit right in front of us. And this is the type of product that sort of sells itself. Its intention is known just from looking at it. There are other things that you can do with it, like poke people, but please don't do that. It holds paper. It does its job pretty well. But why does an easy product win? Because we're lazy. We're human. And the single best predictor of behavior is ease. Some things can be easy because they're cheap. So you could argue with me that, well, price and quality and comfort and desire and satisfaction, they matter a lot. But ease is closely related to friction. And so the easier something is, the more likely people are to do it. On the other side of that, the harder something is not to do, the more likely people are to do it. So we talk a lot about removing friction, but a note about that, sometimes adding friction in the right place encourages people to do something that they would otherwise seek to avoid. And so having those two ideas in the back of your mind is a useful thing. There are two very important things from a growth standpoint in terms of easy and in getting people into the top of the funnel. And those are your main page and your pricing and packaging page. If it's not easy to understand who you are, what value you deliver, and why people should care, or what they get if they're a customer and how much they're going to pay for it, people will walk. You don't need a bunch of complicated content and testimonials to get started with product-led growth. In fact, if you have those things, consider a way to simplify and make it clearer and easier. I'm showing you pitch for a couple of reasons. One is it's what I used to create this presentation because a friend recommended it to me. I, in turn, recommended that to other people, including Britt and Art. Art, I think, actually did present his talk using pitch, but I'm not that great at slide design. And look what I managed to do with that, with a little help from a friend. But look what I also got from it. I knew that I could build a good presentation. I knew that it would cost me nothing. And I knew that I didn't necessarily need the value at higher tiers until later on. This pretty much told me everything I needed to know from a product-led growth standpoint on the consumer or buyer side of things. And I think it's a great example of what good looks like, of what clear and easy look like. And on the Sauce Lab side of things, we make a clear statement about what you get in terms of the confidence that you can obtain in testing things on our platform, and that's going to translate to experiences that your users have where things just work for them. And then we have a pricing and packaging page that's pretty clear based on what we think the value is we deliver, and it aligns to how people buy. Two most important things. Now, let's say you don't know where to begin, or you have a particularly intractable problem that you're trying to solve. Discovery and research and various plays related to this are your way out of that. And the best part of this from a product management standpoint is it's fun. These are your opportunities to be creative, to ask questions, to talk to users. I love this part, but others have a harder time with it because it's less tangible. Discovery means you don't know something, and oftentimes the people on the delivery side of the equation, and this is for those of us who are in product management, who are responsible for writing user stories and shipping stuff, folks get stuck because they're like, well, just tell me what to do or tell me what to build. Discovery helps you understand why. It creates and builds empathy, and there are various tools and ways you can do discovery, and I'm going to share with you some of my favorites as a growth leader in terms of how I like to drive teams to think about things. ICP. This is a term that I don't think a lot of people use. Some people might think it's insane clown posse. It isn't. It's ideal customer profile. So you could think of this as a type of persona. We employ these at Sauce, but there are different dimensions of this. The most notable one is, ideally, what does the profile of a particular customer or an account look like? What are the attributes? What are their values? How do those things map to yours and the types of problems that you solve? And there are a bunch of derivative artifacts that flow from this. Obviously, there are personas. There are journeys. The journey is probably my next favorite thing, because if the overarching theme of this is that growth is a journey, and you're here and you want to get there, mapping where you are and what the experience is like for people that are engaged or on that journey with you is critically important. From a product-led growth standpoint, there are different kinds of journeys, right? You've got buyer journeys, user journeys, experience journeys. These are important. Buyer journeys are important because if your buyer and user are different people, you need to understand, well, how much influence does a user have on a buyer? One of the fundamental things about product-led growth is that we've entered the end user era. So the people who see the value from the product directly, you're meant to position and market to them. But what if you can't? What if right now, for instance, in an enterprise software company, one person has the money and the other person has the need? Mapping those two journeys and figuring out where the friction is, what the motivations are, will help you understand how best to change the path, of your journey to lead to growth, to be able to apply these frameworks more effectively. And this is an example of a journey. And I show it to you not because it's simply pretty, but I think it exposes a lot of the complexity and the layers. Fundamental to a journey is like where you are, the different stages. And this is an example of a buyer's journey. But people become aware of something, they consider, then they buy it, and they're effectively serviced and hopefully retained, and then they might tell people about it. But a lot happens on the path there. Right, and each one of those steps is an opportunity for someone's attention to be diverted, for them to not see the value, for them to become impatient. And these touch points, there are an awful lot of them, and below that are all of the human beings in a business that are involved in helping customers along on their journey. And when I talked about at the beginning of this presentation, the friction within the business, you can see oftentimes there's a tremendous amount of it because of the handoffs, because of the number of people involved. So when you look to eliminate friction or make things better, sometimes you just have to look within, and you can make things a lot easier for your customer in terms of their ability to do business with you. And I think that's an important takeaway when it comes to journeys, right? This is about their relationship with you, their engagement with you, the steps that they take in terms of how they buy solutions like this from you. It is not your view of things based on how they buy from you. And I think that's a pretty important point. Growth is an n+1 problem, right? Where n is the present number of customers or users you have, and 1 is the one that you add to that to create an even bigger sort of base or foundation. Because you're going to lose people, and you want that n number to remain roughly stable. For every customer that you lose, you've got to gain one more to make up for that one, and another to result in growth. Why do people churn? The product is hard to use. This is the reason I focus on easiness and clarity at first, because one of the easiest things I think we can affect and we can change. We can engage with our design partners within an organization. We can do some research and talk to users, and we can make it easier. Harder when the value isn't obvious. So that's figure out where the value is and make sure that you're presenting experience that make the value really obvious. Value is an early and often thing. Show the value early. Show it often, reinforce it. Lack of use, what's going on there? Like, ultimately, you want a product to be an everyday thing for people, right? You want it to add value to their lives, and they use it every day. So if they're not doing that, or they're not using it, maybe they bought something that it turns out they didn't need. That can sometimes happen. More likely, you're missing something. And then, the final thing there is, one of the worst things is a broken promise. When you create an amazing onboarding or trial experience, and then you dump people into a place with tremendous cognitive load and cognitive dissonance, and you basically break the promise of trust that you created. See value quickly and easily, see it cheaply, see it for free, and then all of a sudden, how on earth do I use that, or how do I get from the promise that was made in terms of the value I would see to actually experiencing it? Don't do that. When you violate the trust of a customer, you'll probably never get them back. It's very hard. Why does churn matter? You have to view the relationships that you create with customers as something beyond transactional. So think of it this way, right? In terms of lack of maturity, right? We tend to look at things at the beginning, let's say, as well, we just want to make money. So a transaction is valuable to us because the value of that customer equals the value we're getting from them. But beyond that, at the next stage, if we think about it, we think, well, there's a lot more business that we could do with them. And, salespeople know this because the easiest customers to sell to is the one that they've already got. So loyalty results in a great foundation for growth, right? That's where you're not churning people, you're keeping them around, and you're improving your relationship with them and delivering more value. But at the further end, like, well, actually, let's think about this for a minute. If our product is really amazing and it delivers a lot of value, they're going to tell other people about it, right? This is going to be network effect type stuff where customer value is the sum of all of those transactions plus the ones that they can influence for us. So we don't have to necessarily go out and sell so much. This is the promise of product-led growth, right? Great product sells itself. But there's a pretty significant progression from that to 3 here. The other thing is that software is imperfect, it's impermanent, and it's incomplete, right? It's imperfect. It's going to have bugs. There are going to be problems. You need to fix them. Have a comfortable relationship with that fact and address those needs. It's impermanent. If you don't evolve, your software will become obsolete. Growth is not a destination. It's a process. It's a journey. You will find opportunities to deliver additional value along the way. Evolve your product, grow your product, add features and capabilities where valuable and it makes sense. And of course, products are incomplete. You're not going to release a perfect product that's complete and does all of the things. That just isn't really possible. So growth is a journey. I think I described a little bit about my own journey here and some of the challenges I've had to face and orient myself around. Some of that has to do with the fact that in the organization I work in, the self-serve, the product-led aspect of the product is to a certain extent in competition with the way that our enterprise salespeople or reps position it. And to sort of break that thinking and help them come along on the journey, I have to realize that it takes a village, right? Things have to change. I have to understand what's going on, and I have to be able to reach these people, and we won't be successful with growth unless all of these folks converge on that particular problem or solution or value that we're trying to create and do something about it. Most of us probably attending this session are on the product and engineering side of things, or UX. Maybe there's some customer success folks. I don't know. Because I'm not seeing the chat or anything. But the people that are often neglected on a product-led growth journey are sales, marketing and customer success. All too often, and this is where I've seen things fail the most, product-led growth is done as an isolation play, or people index on the product and they neglect to help sales and marketing and customer success understand the changes necessary to be successful there, especially if what you're doing is combining a top-down motion with one that is bottom-up. For instance, I referred earlier to the competition between enterprise and self-serve. Oftentimes, self-service or great product selling itself can feel like an existential threat. So what's in it for salespeople, right? Assuming you have appropriate differentiation at the different levels of packaging and pricing in your product, which is something I'm actually working on at Sauce right now. What do salespeople get? They get to show rather than tell. They get to use the product to demonstrate the value directly, and the customer gets to experience that. It shifts the engagement of salespeople to a place where they're able to have value-driven and meaningful conversations. They can already assess opportunities for upsell and cross-sell, and they can speak better than anyone else to the differentiation versus the competition. You go to the sales team with that, and they will follow you anywhere. Why? Because you're going to give them the best possible leads, already qualified, that enable them to close deal after deal after deal, and you're giving them lots of opportunity to upsell, cross-sell, land, and expand. All of the things that salespeople are amazingly good at. We have an amazing account team at Sauce, and I want to show them and tell them just how effectively growth can contribute to making their lives better and easier and enabling them to sell. And in terms of marketing, right? Demand generation is number one there, right? The job of marketing is to tell the world about your product and position and message it appropriately. Content has to be aligned to customer pain, driving trials and demos, search engine optimization, that kind of thing. All of this stuff is incredibly important. From a customer success standpoint, these are the folks that reach out to your customers while they're trialing and using the product and asking, how successful are you? Is this working out for you? How can I help you on board? How can I help you adopt? Because that presents a strong basis for retention. Going back to the N+1 problem, right? This is what leads to growth and expansion. Common sense, it is, but it's hard. It's hard to break all of that down. Common sense is not that common. I want to leave you with a couple of mental models here, and I want to allow time for questions, and I know I'm rapidly running out of them. Observe, orient, design, decide, and act. This is how we think. This is how humans and our brains work, right? We observe. Those observations are colored a bit by our orientation, who we are, where we come from, our experiences. Based on the feedback and our senses and the things that we take in, we make decisions, we hypothesize, and then we act. Be aware of that as a model in terms of the way that we think and work, and apply that when you think about the types of problems that you have to solve or the opportunities you're trying to address in driving growth within an organization. I have to think pretty wide because I have to work at a level with other executives and within an organization that cuts across so many different functions, and I have to know a lot about those things. So I have to bring all of that experience to bear. And I think this is a useful way to remember, when you're talking to other people, when you're thinking about how they respond to things, what will motivate them, what will drive them, how to help them learn, right? This is a learning loop. And the other is, one-way and two-way door thinking. Decisions that are irreversible and consequential versus those that are reversible and potentially inconsequential. So a good rule of thumb here is, in the lower left, there be dragons. Think long and hard and be considered and do a lot of research if a decision is going to be risky and something that you might not be able to walk back. on the flip side of things, there are some things that you can just do. The reason I highlight this is that not everything's an experiment. Sometimes you just know. And those sorts of things, it's okay to just do. But be aware. Be aware of the doors that you're walking through and what kind of door it is when you make a particular decision. And to round it out, basically what I'm saying here is, on a given journey, wherever you're starting from, begin by being situationally aware. Where am I? What's going on around me? Establish some baselines. Observe and orient yourself. Gather data. Measure. Talk to people. And then do something. Take some decisions. Act. Take some risks. And observe cause and effect and the link between those two things. Right. The thing with product-led growth that I've always found really amusing is that there's some element of scientific method to it, right? And we've learned about this, all of us probably somewhere in the third grade, that we form hypotheses and we think that this might have that effect, and we try and we do something. That could be packaged up into a framework, but ultimately don't forget that there should be a causal link between a thing that you do and the effects that it has. So when you conduct experiments, try to minimize the number of variables, like down to one, so that you have a valid experiment. And then, repeat. Growth is a journey. It's a work in progress. I like to finish presentations by saying I'm human. All things change constantly, including you and me, including our products, including our companies. That's part of the growth mindset. And on that note, I would appreciate any feedback that you might have to offer. I'm really sorry about the technical difficulties and that I was late, but I hope it was worth your time and bringing it back down to earth. Thank you. And that is me descending Painted Cave Road down in Santa Barbara on the human side of things. I do a lot of biking. I like to see around and be out in the world. It's my happy place. It's what allows me to think and be creative. Thank you.
Hey, Chris, thanks a lot. There's one question submitted. I'm not sure if you're able to see the questions or not. This one is probably a tough one to answer in this format. Maybe a blog entry, but anyways, are there any specific articles, books, or tools that you'd recommend to launch someone on their product journey? I would say like this session is going to be available, for you can look at review this video. I don't know if Chris, if you have any more comments in terms of how to respond to that in terms of tools or articles around that would be useful.
I mean, there are many ones. I mean, I actually think that OpenView is one of the best places to start. They have so much material there. I think there are a couple of really good books. One I like a lot. It was written by Todd Olson, and I think it's called The Product-Led Organization. He's the CEO of Pendo, but I think it's really practical, and it's not sort of vendor specific over there. He walks through a lot of these things. I don't know if Susanna's on this call, but the 280 group has some really good resources in terms of digital product management. I know that not everybody's coming from a place where where they're already doing that or applying these types of things. And I think she and the folks over there, David Nash as well, do a pretty fantastic job demystifying and explaining things. There's a lot of material out there, and so you have to be selective. One slide I didn't have in here, but it's sort of a quote attributed to the Buddha is, believe nothing simply because you've been told it, but sort of go out, find high trust sources of information, test what you learn, in practice and based on your own observations, and only then believe that those things are true. And so I could probably come up with a list of specific things that I could leave behind, but OpenView and some of the folks that do a lot of training around this stuff, I think is super helpful.
Super. Chris, we're out of time. We're up against some of the giveaways from the day, and so I want to let people go over there and assemble there to celebrate with the winners. Again, thank you very much, and again, I also apologize for the delay in getting us off the ground, but great presentation. And again, the video will be available off the main lobby as well for review. Thank you very much.